Hi there. So today what we're going to do is this little koi fish card. Um the outline is available on my website and should be a link to the YouTube channel that you can just pull this up and transfer the outline. And for this one, we're going to lay down our background, do our fish, and then come in with pen details and then do some splatter on the top to make it look like they're under the water. At least that's the goal. I In this one I used ultramarine blue, but this one I think I want to do cerulean because I want the greener blue, because cerulean's a little bit greener, and I like the way that it contrasts. So we're going to try it that way. You are free to use whichever color you want. These circles here are done by Pouncers. So if you have a couple of these, great. If not, you can do the same thing with a circular brush motion and then your paper towel or rag to pull up the color. It's just kind of a bokeh effect, but I did pop in a couple of green circles to just kind of make this a little bit more fun. Also, when I did the transfer, I didn't put it in the right spot. So I have some of my fish that go off underneath the tape. I'm going to try something when I remove the tape. So I'm going to do the splatter and everything and then remove the tape and then do my pen details and maybe have this fish's fins and a little bit of its tail running off onto the white part, kind of bringing it up out of the painting. But sometimes that's fun. If you don't like it, don't do it. Or just don't even put the tape down at all and have it go all the way to the edges. Either way is fine. It's really whatever makes you happy. And this is 1/4 inch washi tape. I like to use the 1/4 inch washi tape on these small 4x6s because it gives me, this would take away all of my painting surface if I did this. It would have a very big white section and not enough pretty section. I realize I just kind of ramble. Um, We're going to be using Cerulean Blue, Mayan Orange, Quinacridone Gold, and Bleed Proof White for this painting. And then we're just going to kind of play with it. If there's mistakes, we'll just kind of deal with them as we go, just like we always do. But our first thing to do is going to be to put down the background. And one of the things I didn't like about this is I didn't get it close enough to the fish in a couple of spots. So you lose, they just don't pop enough. So I'm probably going to try to make sure I have the blue nice and dark around the fish and then pop it out and then fade it out in other spots, if any of that makes any sense. So to do this, I'm going to use a 6, and then I also have a 2, and I have a 1-inch wash brush for when I'm doing out in here. I'm going to use the 6 mainly so I can make sure I get these little spots and make sure that they don't bleed in too much with the fish's tail and things like that. All right. So first things first, I have cerulean blue. I don't keep that in this palette, so I added some up here. And I've got my brush. You can wet this whole area first, but I'm going to do it in sections around each fish. I feel like that's going to give me better control and I won't have to work as quickly. So I'm going to try to remember to work from left to right because I am right-handed, because I wanted to start on this one. I always want to start on the right, but I need to start on the left so I don't get it everywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and just put some water in between the tail here too. And you can't really see it, and that's okay. Just get some water and lay it down. I'm not sure how well you can see it in the video. I'm just going around this fish, being fairly careful. I'm not worried about the whiskers. We can put those on. Those are pen detail. And we're just getting this damp so that we can start with this section. And I'm going to go ahead and take this all the way down. And take this up over here. I can see the puddling. This is Canson. 140-pound cold press in a block. It's one of my favorite things to use because it just likes to work the way I like to work. However, if you don't have this kind of watercolor, try it with something else. See what happens. No harm in trying. So I'm going to get some of this blue straight from the palette because I really want that bright contrast. And I'm going to just start putting it in. Ooh, yeah, this is such a pretty color. Putting it in these little spots, kind of painting the negative space where the fish is not. And here you can see the water is catching it and now pulling it around. You have to work pretty quickly to get it while it is still wet, so you get those fuzzy edges that you're going for. Or if you're not going for them, that's also fine. But yeah, this water just got soaked up. A little bit more paint and a little bit more water. There we go. Okay, I'm going to just kind of keep moving that around, trying to avoid hard edges, trying to keep it nice and wet. And then just basically fuzzing that out a little bit since I'm going to move to another fish. And I don't want this to get to be a hard spot. We can always add more color, which we will. Don't worry, we're going to add more color. But this way we can move on to the next section of fish and make sure we don't do it or lose what we've done here. So let's do this little guy up here. He doesn't have as many fiddly spots. And yeah, there's a little bit of blue in the paint water now. That's okay because we're putting blue down. Adding a little bit more, bringing it up to this one. There we go. And now we're going to get some of the cerulean. And again, if you wanted to use the ultramarine blue, that's what you have. That's fine. Any blue that you have is probably fine. When you have lots of colors, sometimes you do experimentations with other colors just to see what you can do. So we're just getting around the outlines. We're not being super particular. It's okay. This does not need to be an even wash. In fact, I would try to caution you against trying to make it super even because if it's an even wash, it won't look like water. So let's blur out these edges. Do, 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 do. Just want to soften them out. So I just got some clean water on the brush or the bluish water. It's fine. And put that down. And we're going to add more color. So it's going to be okay. We just want to get these fiddly sections done first, and then we can be a little bit more loose with what we're doing. So last fish, go up and around, right in between that tail. And I'm doing all of this with my size 6. You are welcome to use a smaller brush, but this will do it a little faster and give you a little less control so you're not quite so particular, if that makes any sense. But then you can just relax with what you're doing. Okay, I've done that. Now let's get the cerulean. And so this part's really wet. So you're going to see it really spray and spread out, which is what I was hoping to have happen before, but it just didn't want to. I wasn't working fast enough. And now you can see all of that spread out and how gorgeous just letting the paint react with the water is. It's just a super fun way to get the background on. I give it a little bit more with the little brush right now. Okay. Now I am going to switch. I actually have this 3/4 inch oval wash brush, which I actually like better for this kind of stuff. So that's what I'm going to do. It holds a decent amount of water without being too messy. So I'm going to take and I am just going to wet the rest of our paper. If it pulls the color that's there, that's great. It's totally what it's supposed to do. All right, so now we have a nice wet background to work with. So let's get some more of the cerulean and then just start putting it in. It doesn't have to be very particular. It is water, so it won't really matter if you kind of just drop it in and give it movement. That's what I'm doing here. Now I'm going to clean this brush off and set it to the side, and I'm going to get my 6 again, and I'm just going to hit these areas where you can see the line, like right here, right in here, just to get rid of some of that stiffness. Really open that up a bit. Okay, and now I'm going to take, and you always want to go your lighter color into your darker color. So I'm going to get some of the Quinacridone Gold, and I'm going to put it right here. This is a fairly clean spot on my palette. And I'm going to get some of the cerulean, and I'm going to mix it together and get myself a little bit of a green. Just a nice bluey green, and we're just going to put it in a couple of spots. Because koi often live, they're carp. They're bottom feeders, so there's usually a lot of vegetation in their water. You can just kind of drop that in wherever it feels good to you. Kind of doing a diagonal across compositionally, but it's, again, if you don't like the green, don't put it in. It's totally fine with me. It will not bother me. Okay. So before all of this dries, and we've got some whites, sections right there. I don't want that much, so I'm just toning it down a little bit with the green that's mixed in, so it's totally fine. So now I have my little pouncers, and since this paint is still wet, we can go down and push and twist, and it's going to kind of pull and give us just round shapes. If you get it just a touch wet, and then have your towel nearby, checking it on my hand, get the density of the water, push, twist, and see how that pulled up a nice spot. We tap. We can overlap them. You have to be very careful that it's not too wet, or it's really going to pull everything up. And this is just like a really fast, easy way to do the bokeh effect, where you don't have to worry about making sure your circles are perfect. You can just doop. And this was my smallest one. You can do it with the bigger one and get bigger circles. Here, let's do a couple bigger ones. And overlapping is fine. Running them off the edge is fine. So we'll do that right here. And maybe we'll put one here. And tap. And tap. Okay, so there you go. You've got that. Now, because I've done this circle effect, I'm going to take the pouncer and I'm going to kind of dry it off. You can tell I use my thumb and my hand to do a lot of things. I'm going to dip it right into the green paint that I have, and then try to make sure it's nice and covered. I know it's not a real paintbrush, but that's okay. And we're going to put some green spots in. And it gives us a little bit of a vegetation effect because it's a spongy surface, so it's not going to be perfectly smooth. So there we go. That's our background. You'll need to make words hard. Okay. Need to let this dry or make it dry. So I'm going to go ahead and make it dry. I have a hot air gun that I use for this. It does sometimes get caught in the camera, so hopefully it is not making you guys shake. So then I'm going to dry it. So I went with the greener blue because while blue and orange are complementary colors, if you pop it to green just a tiny touch, I'm hoping because this orange is kind of a reddy orange, it's really going to make the fish pop. So let's go. We're going to just start working on the fish. We're going to do them one at a time. We're going to use water to fill in and then drop in our Mayan Orange. If your colors have gotten dry during the time frame, that's what your spray bottle is for, and you just spritz it again. So we have the Mayan Orange, and we're going to use some of the Q Gold in these, but not a lot. Okay? So we're going to get some water. I know it's not clean anymore. That's okay, because it will help give us the shadows for the fish. So let's do, I can never seem to work from right to left without thinking about it. So let's get the water down. We've dried the background, so it shouldn't blur into what we're doing. My transfer is a little hard to see now, but that's okay. You get a little blue into your koi fish, that is fine. It will give it shadow. It's totally okay. Because the harsh white will probably be too much. Okay. Now we're going to take some Mayan Orange. Just get a little bit of it on your brush. I am using my 6. And I am going to drop in where I think there should be some orange. And just let it do what it wants to do. On the tail, I'm going to go on the edge. I wish the water was still there a little bit, so we might come back in. You can see where it's wet, it's doing a great job of bleeding out, which is what I wanted. Okay, but where it didn't, we'll just help it. So I'm going to get a little bit of water on my brush, tap it on my towel, and just start coming in and adding some water here in the tail. And then anywhere else where I feel like it hasn't bled out enough, bled out. I'm not trying to kill the fish here, but okay. And if you want, you can grab a little bit of the Quinacridone Gold, just give them like another couple of spots. But sometimes they have a little bit of yellow in them. I mean, they are carp. All right, so we'll call that first one done. We'll add some more when we do the details, you'll get to see the difference. So let's do this guy. And remember, there's part of him that's not in here. So we're going to have to add that in. This one had a very, very light head. Let's make this one have a darker head. And we'll just drop it in like that. And you're letting the water do a lot of the work for you. Oh, so, and since this water is touching the other water, it's bringing it down. I forgot to do the spine of that fish. We'll just add the color there. So again, we're just adding water to this section. The orange has already started pooling in different spots. Perfect. Let's make this one's fin a bit more pronounced. And then the tail. And these little side fins. I'm kind of trying to make sure I don't leave a ton of white on the edges. When we add the white gel pen, it'll make a huge difference. All right, so we can't add yellow in one spot and then only and not have it anywhere else. So let's do a little bit of this Q gold in this one just to warm him up a bit. There we go. All right, let's do our last fish. See, this is a real quick one, but it looks really cool when you're done. At least I think so. So I'm really hyping up the water here in the tail on this one. So I want the tail. I got that some of that out of where I wanted it. I want the tail to kind of bleed in here where it's very obviously floating in the water. And I thought if it could bleed in, that would be great. Now here I got the water a little bit in between because I wasn't paying attention. So I'm going to avoid that section to start. So I'm going to just start right in here. And you can feel free to add more white spots, leave more white spots. You can leave a fully white fin. You can do however you want. Your fish do not have to look like mine. I just wanted to have a little bit of the mottled effect of your typical koi fish. And watercolor dries lighter, so if it's looking too light, put a little bit more on. And we'll do this little fin here. Oop, that bled out a little. That's okay. Okay. So your fish are done. I know, they do not look like much. They are done until we can do the pen details, which for right now, we have to wait till this dries. I don't want to splatter the bleed proof white on while this section is wet because then it will bleed. So what I'm going to do is prep my bleed proof white. So, and you need to make sure there's some water in your bleed proof white. I leave my bleed proof white out and without the lid on the jar, probably more than I should admit, and that's why it gets a little hard. Sorry. But you can reconstitute it with just adding water, which is what I've done. I've had this for a very long time. It lasts for a really long time. It is definitely worth buying. Okay, I'm gonna move this one because it's already been spattered. We're dry over here, so let's just try to get some splatter. Okay, you need it to be really wet to do the splatter. There we go. And it's landed on some of the wet parts. It's just gonna fade out. I sometimes use this in like for stars, and there's another painting coming up where we're gonna make this look like the white flowers in the background. You can also dot a few spots in if you want. Even make them like perfectly circular, like little bubbles. It's your call. All right, I'm going to set this aside. We need this to dry. You know, you can use the blow dryer. So I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to make it dry. I'm going to peel the tape on this top corner so I can finish the fish tail and piece that were covered by the tape. And then I'm going to add our pen details and then we'll be done. Dry it first before I take off the tape. Plus, the heat from the dryer loosens your tape up and makes it a lot easier to peel your tape without burning your tape or ripping your paper. Now, if you don't want to do this next part with a pen, then you don't have to. You can use a brush. I just, for tiny little details, feel like I do a little bit better with a pen. And we have our very fun and satisfying tape pull. We are just really enjoying right now. I love a tape pull. Okay, now this part you don't have to do. If you've decided you don't care that your fish gets cut off, that's fine. You don't need to do this part. But I want to. I feel like right here, our fishtail got cut off a little bit. So I'm just putting some water out to the edge. And I'm getting a little bit of the Mayan Orange. And I am just letting it fill out a little section of that fishtail. And I freaking love it. But again, if you don't, it's okay. So here we're going to just do this little edge of our fish and this little side fin here, and then the tail fin that goes up, and then this one would come to match it just a little bit. All right, and then we get the Mayan Orange again, and we drop, and we let it just kind of go. Same over here. Just let it go. Right over the edge of your tape lines. It's a thing for me I really love. I love the clean edges, and then I love to mess them up. I understand that that might drive other people completely crazy. It's just me. It's what I like to do. If you don't do it. It's totally fine with me if you don't choose to do that. Okay, so we're done with the bleed proof white. So we put the lid on the bleed proof white. Now we set it to the side. I like to do the black details first, and then I'm going to come in with the white pen, and I'm going to outline each fish. And the reason I'm also going to do the black details first is these parts are wet, and we don't want to come in and mess with a wet section because it'll ruin your pen. Okay, so I outlined the fin, the dorsal fin, with my black pen. And then I just did some tiny little like hatching lines to give it some dimension. And then I did the eyes. These are how I do the eyes. So I just do a little swoop from where they are. And then I dot in the pupil. And then I did the whiskers. And if you didn't like the way I drew those whiskers, you can make them as curly or as not curly as you'd like. Okay? So we're going to do that on all three fish. When you get to this top one, if you drew on the back of the fish, you want to make sure that part is dry. If you painted on the back of the fish, you make sure that's dry before you use the pen because you don't want to ruin your pen. And these are just black Micron pens, but I have absolutely done this with just regular old ballpoint pens. Honestly, a lot of times it's what I have available and close. And I think that gives you a lot more freedom when you're painting to just do whatever's close. And then you can just have fun with it. So I'm going to turn him around just so I have a little bit easier access and I don't have to worry about getting my hand wet. Just doing these eyes. Just like that. And some whiskers or catfish feelers. That's super fun. So it's not completely dry. I can't put in that dorsal fin until I dry it. I wanted to wait till it was a little bit more dry before I hit it with the heat gun because it can sometimes blow the paint around. So I'm going to hold it up a little higher this time. Okay, we are dry. All right, so I'm going to put in this last dorsal fin, and I realized I didn't do this one over here. So let's just put these in. And remember, the outlines are just guidelines. You don't have to follow them exactly. And if you don't like putting the fins in like this, don't do it. I will not be upset with you. I want you to make it your own and have fun with it. Okay, so the black stuff's done. Now we're going to switch to the white. And literally for this part, all we're going to do is outline the fish. My gel pens don't always work super great. So the palm of my hand is my tester for the gel pens to get the pen going. For other people, they like to do other things. They like to use paper. I don't know. I use my hand because I always have my hand on me. So I'm going to get mad at my gel pen because it wanted to jump. And we're just outlining. Now you can put little lines in the fins. I like to do it in the tail too. So let me get the tail. And I'm not putting the outline at the very edges. I'm leaving that open. And then I'm just doing some squiggles in that tail right there, like that. And oddly, this little touch really, I feel, brings this whole thing together. And you can always go back in and add more gel if it's not doing what you want. So we'll do this tail. And when it stops working, I write on my hand some more to get some more paint out of the pen. These really need to be used kind of straight up and down. I find that when I turn them to the side, they don't seem to want to work as well. And I'm even running some of the white into the water, so it's just the frilliness of the end of the tail. Maybe like a betta fish. And again, you don't have to follow it exactly. You can do however you want with that. If you want to add like a little bit more swirly lines to it. Okay, and then we've got one fish left. Thinking my paper isn't as dry as it needs to be, and that's why I'm having so many difficulties. But patience is just not my strong suit, so oh well. Which will be really fun with some of next month's paintings because they require patience. Oh boy, I'm gonna have a hard time. And we just do this final one up in here, go around his head. And there you go. Your finished koi fish. And you can see how it's really easy to just change it up by changing the blues or changing any of the colors. You can have a great time with this. You can make the water pink. You can do whatever you want because no one is there to stop you. This is your painting and you get to play with it however you want, which is super fun. But don't forget to sign it. I'm going to sign it with just my initials. And I'm going to call it Koi Pond. Because what I do is I take these and then I stick them in a sleeve and then I tape them to a 5x6 card and mail them out to people, 5x7. So if you would like one of my originals mailed to you, you should probably message me with your email or your mailing address, because these go out whenever I get them finished, really. They're birthday cards to some people and then they go to other people.